Very good morning to all the viewers in the US and a very good evening to all the viewers in India today. I'm very excited because today we are back with the third episode of our podcast series, Physical Health Matters. Now, this is a podcast series which has been initiated by a social media community called Physical Therapists in the US. And the biggest motivation behind starting up this community, and I am very fortunate that I've been part of this community right from the very beginning. So, this community basically aims to give a voice to the amazing work that physical therapists across the world and in the US in particular are doing. So, whether it is tending to patients, whether it is working with technology innovations, whether it is burning the midnight oil, physical therapists in the USA have been at it and have been working relentlessly at it. And this podcast series aims to provide a voice to all the spectacular work, fascinating work that physical therapists in the US have been doing. So either they are doing it as practitioners, they are running their own practices, or in some cases, they're part of much larger physical therapy setups, and everyone is contributing there in their own small way. My name is Arunab Sinha, and I'm one of the co-founders of the brand called Remesis. Remesis is a health tech platform which is working on bridging the gap in engagement between patients and doctors. We have been working on this initiative for more than 1 year now, and we're a wonderful team, a small bunch of professionals based between California in the US and Bangalore in India. Over the last 12 to 13 months, we have interacted with more than 300 physical therapists across the US to understand the kind of challenges that they are facing. And there's one common theme that has constantly emerged, which is engagement right now is broken. So patients and doctors, they're communicating, but the communication is led by bots. And this often leads to patient dropout because patients don't feel cared enough. So this is precisely what we are solving for. We are trying to make the engagement between patients and physical therapists more humanized in a way that the patients feel cared for. And I'll talk a lot about this as we progress during today's podcast. But now let me take this opportunity to introduce you to our guest for today. And he wears a lot of hats. So he's an entrepreneur, he's a doctor, he's a physical therapist, he's a writer, he's a trainer. And I'm pretty sure there are some aspects that I'm missing out. So I'll let Dr. Bhavik Sheth talk more about his journey and what is he doing currently. Over to you, Dr. Bhavik.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Bhavik Sheth. I'm a physical therapist by profession, and currently I'm the lead physical therapist and owner of Elite Movement Initiative, and it's a physical and an occupational therapy practice. My journey started a long time ago, I would say. Like many people that are in the healthcare field, usually there's some kind of incident or event that's happened in their past that introduced them to the healthcare side, in the healthcare industry. And then from there, through schooling and other experiences, they kind of get more and more into it and more passionate about it. And I had a very similar experience and story. I was a very active child, so played lots of sports, big into dance and other kind of just hobbies that were very physical in nature. And when I was in college, I had a pretty bad knee injury. So I tore my ACL playing basketball. And I was already down the route of applying to either medical school or something in the healthcare space. And I had surgery. I had lots of physical therapy. And I was lucky enough that I had a really good experience with the physical therapist that I was working with at that time. And just watching his life, he was also the owner of his own practice, and he was working with me as I was his patient. And it was close to my college campus, and I just loved the community feel to it. He would ask about school, he would ask about my dorm, he would ask how long it takes for me to walk from my dorm to my classrooms, and lecture halls are everywhere. And he really understood what it felt like to be a college student. So the relationship we had really inspired me, and I really saw that I could have that same relationship with a lot of different people. So then I pursued physical therapy, and graduated from New York Medical College in 2016 and have been in practice ever since. Um, so I mainly work with orthopedic and sports injuries, but as I've been getting more and more experienced over the years, I started working more with the geriatric population, neurological population as well, and it's been hugely rewarding. I started my private practice in 2019, and it started initially more hybrid. And I think this is something that I think is very interesting and very exciting about healthcare private practices, is that it can take many different shapes and forms, and it doesn't have to be the same thing that you start with. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the same practice over 5 years, over 10 years, over 15 years. There's always going to be a little bit of change based off of the economy, based off of what's going on in your community and whatever your community needs. Or you can always adapt and find a way to serve people. And already in the last 3 years, I would say like we've grown and changed and kind of molded along the ways. Um, and yeah, it's been a very interesting ride for me, and it's been very fun. And I feel very fortunate that I have like a really strong support system, because a lot of this it's not really possible without that. Um, I'm in practice with my wife. She's an occupational therapist, and together we work on a lot of different cases, and that's been a really interesting relationship to have personally and professionally as well. Um, so I currently live in New York City, Queens, New York, one of the most diverse and I would say like culturally friendly neighborhoods in the whole world. Almost everybody that you might meet in a different country, there's some kind of representation in Queens, and that's been really it's a big part of why I decided to continue and start my practice out here. Um, I think there's a lot to learn from people, and I think there's a lot that I can hopefully teach people as well. So that relationship, like a give and take, me learning and me teaching, that's been something that's been very um it's been very fun for me, and it wanted me to pursue and put more energy towards my private practice, because I really wasn't getting that same feeling when I was working in different settings.
Interesting. So I've been reading up about you a bit since the time you confirmed that you would be happy to come on the podcast. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, that you seem to be wearing a lot of hats. So you are a
Mhm.
writer, you are an entrepreneur, you are a physical therapist, you also are
Mhm.
a trainer. And obviously, you're doing a lot of things together, but
Mhm.
forget the monetary rewards and forget the challenges. Which part of this excites you the most?
I think I do really enjoy being a physical therapist, and I think that's probably the most exciting and rewarding for me. You know there, I do a lot of things. I do also want to highlight that um I'm a member of a community, member of a family, and all of these things are very important. But one thing that I've learned in physical therapy school and in my practice is just an approach to solving problems. So it doesn't matter what hat I'm wearing, it doesn't matter who I'm working with, or even you know in just conversation with friends sometimes. Um, Things that I've learned as a physical therapist are still useful, just me being a person. There's a lot of labels I can have, but I think the most exciting and most interesting thing that I like to do is solve problems and then kind of be active and trying to execute these problems. So I definitely think that the physical therapy side of things in my life are the most rewarding, because it kind of helps me analyze things in a different way for other problems in my life or other situations in my life. So it kind of carries over into a lot of different things. So, like for example, um, when I see a patient, the first thing that I am trying to do is gather information, right? So before I even assess the person's body, before I see how they're walking, how they're squatting, how they're moving their shoulder, I'm just asking them questions about their life, what's been going on the last few months, what's their home environment like, what's their stress levels like, and are they sleeping well? I'm just asking them questions just to gather information. And before I even think about anything, I'm just collecting data. And I think that's such a useful step that a lot of times people forget in personal lives or in other relationships or other situations. You know, sometimes you just hear and you just react, or you hear and then you just start solving problems, but then you don't really have all the information yet. And being a physical therapist has really helped me, you know, improve that in other aspects of my life as well. Yeah, so I definitely think being a physical therapist is the most exciting thing. And I do hope that in the future I get to spend more time being a physical therapist and less time being an administrator, being like a this is just other things. I love the patient dynamic. I love treating people. I love talking to people. And I hope to do more of that along the years.
So, if I understand it right, you are a physical therapy entrepreneur at this point in time. But obviously, this is not where you started. So you got educated in physical therapy, you got the training done, and then you worked for a few years as part of a larger team. And now you're doing your full practice. So a couple of questions for you there. One is, if you could quickly walk us through the kind of setup that you have at this point in time. And the second, something that I feel a lot of viewers would also be interested in understanding is what was the biggest trigger, or what prompted you from being an employee to suddenly being an employer?
Yeah. So currently my setup is I'm in private practice full time. Basically, I formed a company in 2019 and I do all of my billing and everything through that. I am an at-home therapist primarily right now, so concierge physical therapist, and I work in Manhattan, Queens, areas of Long Island, sometimes in New Jersey, just wherever I have like a case and a client that needs help. I'll try to find my way to take care of that. And then that's probably like currently it's about 75% of my caseload is at-home services, and about 25% is telehealth and remote. So I'm licensed in California, New York, and New Jersey. So those are like the 3 states where I have some patients as well. And kind of exciting news is like a week ago, me and my wife, we are opening up a physical location in Forest Hills. So we're in the process of building it out, and hopefully the clinic space will be ready to start seeing patients in maybe January or February. So that's like the next new step that we're taking, and trying to have more of a local brick and mortar clinic. So that's currently where we are. And I think the important thing to know is that it doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen one day whenever you put your mind to it. You know, there's a lot of steps that go along the way. There's a lot of events that need to happen that inspire you and trigger you into going down this path. And I feel very fortunate that I started my career working in Manhattan and was working for a pretty big private practice that was growing a lot at the time. So when I joined, there was maybe 8 clinics, and by the time a year later, there was like 12 or 13 clinics. A year later, there was like 15 clinics. So I was experiencing a lot of rapid growth, and being a physical therapist in that situation, I got a lot of opportunities because of that as well. So I got to manage and direct the whole clinic from day one, when there was 0 patients in the door and it was just me, up until we had 5 full-time physical therapists working, seeing about 250 visits a week. So it went from 0 to 250 in about a year and a half. And I was managing the clinic for about 3 years. And just along the time, I kind of realized things. I've learned a lot of things, but I still felt like there was something missing. Like there was a lot of decisions I felt like I wanted to make that I wasn't able to, because I didn't have ownership over the clinic. I was a middle manager. I felt like I was really good at my job. I was really good at like hiring and finding good people and implementing things that the clinic wanted. And I think we were a very successful clinic. Very successful clinic, and we did a lot of good work. A lot of patients were taken care of very well. Um, but from my point of view, I still didn't feel like I had the power to make all the improvements as I felt were necessary. Um, and I think that's the important thing, where sometimes, and I can imagine this from like my patient's point of view, or even when I was a patient with my knee injuries, there's a lot of things I wanted to do. I just didn't have the power, the ability, or the range of motion or strength to do certain things. I felt like that as the therapist manager of my clinic, where there's a lot of things I wanted to do. I just didn't have the means or the ability to do so. And along the years, um, it kind of became more and more evident to me that if I don't have ownership, if I don't have the full decision-making ability, that I'm not really going to be fully satisfied. Um, I'm not going to be able to make the change that I think is necessary, and or even make the impact to the community as I would like to. There's a lot of times I had to um, say no to situations when I knew I could easily find a solution. I had to kind of turn things away when, if I was the owner of the clinic, I wouldn't. I would find a way to take care of a situation, take care of certain people. And um, it was really that dynamic that kind of made me feel like, I can do this. I can do this on my own. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to take a little bit of education. Um, Outside of everything here, you have to learn about the industry. You have to learn about um, just being like a small business in general. And then you can make things happen. So it was a lot of feelings like that, where I felt like I was in the middle, not having ownership and not being in power to make a good enough change that I know I was able to do. And this is something that maybe a lot of athletes, a lot of people in general can have, like, share this experience, where if you're capable of doing this much, but you underperform, it doesn't feel good. Like if you're a basketball player and you're really talented in one thing, but you're underperforming, it doesn't feel good. It kind of breaks you a little bit. It kind of takes your confidence away. So a high performer, like if somebody's really interested, really excited, very passionate, if they keep on getting shut down, they lose their spirit, they lose their energy. And that's kind of where I felt like was happening to me also. um so then awesome things were happening in my life. I was getting married. Me and my wife, we were planning on moving to California and start this whole exciting chapter in our life, where we were going to do travel therapy for a whole year and just kind of go from like city to city to city and just have like a long extended honeymoon type of situation. But the pandemic happened right then, right? So we had moved to California in March 2020. A week later, the whole state shuts down. But the good thing about what happened for us, we were fortunate enough that just 3 months prior, I had maybe 3, 4 months prior, I started my private practice, and I was already telling a lot of people I was in contact with that I'm going to move to California, but I want to continue working with you remotely via telehealth. So let's continue the sessions going. I was already seeing people privately in New York prior to moving to California. So when the pandemic happened, the whole world turns upside down. But I was already working with people via telehealth when that started. So I just kind of continued and grew from there. Um, and I think the nice thing about this is, when you're in private practice as a healthcare practitioner, it doesn't have to be a full-time thing. It does not have to be a full-time job. It does not have to take over your entire life. There's a lot of people that have full-time positions, and then they do private practice on the side, or in addition to. um, if your hours are flexible enough at work, then you can also easily take on 1 or 2 cases on the side, or even on weekends. And that's the kind of approach we had to this. During the all of pandemic, I was working as a home health physical therapist, and really I had a pretty good work experience there in California. And it gave me a lot of flexibility, that in the mornings around 8 o'clock, I could work with some clients of mine in New York, because it was 11 o'clock here, 8 o'clock in the morning there. So I would see 1 or 2 telehealth patients, then see my 5 to 6 home health patients, And then maybe Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, while I'm, home just really doing nothing besides exercising, I would take on one or two telehealth cases as well. So I think that's when I really learned the value of starting a private practice, that it doesn't have to be a clinic where you're spending all day long in. It doesn't have to take such a huge investment either. There's a lot of flexible ways to do things. And then, California was really good 2 years for us. And then we moved back to New York because we were missing that community feel. We were missing, like, I grew up here. I grew up in Queens. I grew up in such a big community, lots of diversity, lots of people nearby, and just walking down the block, you're gonna see 4 or 5 friends of yours, or just people that live nearby. And there was like this whole feeling that we had that we didn't get to experience during the pandemic in California. So we moved back here, and here we are a year later.
Oh, so I actually have a lot of follow-up questions to that, but I really loved the basketball example that you gave, where if you're not giving your 100%, something within your heart says that you're not doing it right. But to all those students of physical therapy, or somebody who is currently a physical therapist, a part of a much larger organization, and is looking forward to start up on his own, I think Bhavik's statement reads absolutely true, is that obviously it gives you a lot more accountability, it gives you a lot more independence, it gives you the freedom to build a company, build a culture, which you deem right. But as Bhavik very rightly said, that this is not something that is going to happen overnight. So you sleep tonight and tomorrow you're not going to become an entrepreneur. It's a process, it's a journey. So it's a very strong message out there, because there are a lot of people and a lot of physical therapists that we've interacted over the last 12 months who are wanting to start up on their own, but are a little clueless. So I also understand, Bhavik, that you are a very passionate trainer, and you also want to give advice. You also want to train physical therapists who want to start up on their own. So is this something that you do as a professional,
Yeah.
in the sense that there's a course and you charge people for it, or are you doing this purely as a hobby?
A little bit of both. I think I'm very passionate about growing a community of private practice therapists all over the United States. I think that there needs to be more education behind this in schools, and I even approached my physical therapy school a year ago just to see if during these professional development courses that a lot of these campuses and schools have, but they don't talk about entrepreneurship, or if they do, they talk about it like you have to write a business plan, and it's very hypothetical. So they don't really go into the step-by-step like tactical things. You have to do this, then you have to do this, you have to do this. Like, there's certain things that you just need to know what to do and what to get before you can start seeing patients privately. So I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I approached my school and trying to get connected with them a little bit more on being like a guest speaker, or even just like a resource if anybody's interested. If there's like a private practice group in the school, just they can use me as a reference. But I do believe that the moment somebody graduates from any kind of program and they're licensed in the United States, that's already the hard part. You've already done the hardest thing that's needed to start a private practice, which is obtaining a license.
Sure.
And then after that, you spent so much time and energy investing into your license that you're not really getting a good return on that investment unless you're in private practice mostly, right? Where there's very few cases or jobs in the United States where you're making enough of a return based off the investment you've put in towards your education. And unfortunately, that's like the sad reality. And in that situation, very few people are really taking full advantage of such a powerful tool that they have, which is a license in the state that they practice. So one thing that I'm hoping to kind of share this message is, any therapist that's licensed, start thinking about entrepreneurship, even in the sense that you're going to work with people privately on the side. And like people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on their education, but they spent years and years and years of time, brain power, studying, and then you just go to a job you don't enjoy, then it's kind of like a huge waste. But if you start a private practice, you even see like one patient a week privately on your own, that can that can really transform your lives. And that's something that I was having a conversation with like a former coworker of mine. She was feeling very burnt out financially. There was a little bit of a struggle as well, and she changed a couple of jobs here and there, and still really wasn't feeling too happy. And part of it was a financial burden. And I asked her, like, do you have like 1 hour a week that you can spend working on the side as a physical therapist? And she's like, yeah, I can spend 1 hour a week. I'm like, okay, great. If you do that for a whole year, you'll make an extra $5,000 a year. Would that $5,000 really change your life? And she's like, yeah, that would really change my life, because I can pay down some student loans. I can go on a vacation. She has family in South America. She can go travel to her family and visit them with that money. And then I asked her, so $5,000 would really dramatically change your life? 100% sure. Yeah, it would definitely change my life. And then I asked her, in a week, if you spend 1 extra hour a week working, is that going to change your life? She's like, no, that really won't. It doesn't. Like, I spend an hour just doing anything, so 1 hour a week doesn't change my life, but the reward of $5,000 a year can change my life. And that's when it kind of clicked for her that it doesn't have to be all in. She can still have her full-time job and just do this on the side. And she's again, she's going down her own journey now, and it's whatever works for her. But now she's more in control of her situation, and she feels much more in charge. And now she's able to pick and choose a job that kind of fits her lifestyle more, rather than picking a job that pays the most, even though it's the wrong fit for her. Because now financially, she can also do this on the side and make up the difference there. So I do this both. I do this as a hobby. Like, if somebody needs just a little bit of guidance, I'm happy to talk to people. I'm happy to more like be a coach, be an inspiration, or just kind of just show people that you can do this, and you don't have to pay thousands of dollars for a course. You don't have to pay lawyers these ridiculous fees sometimes to start up a practice. There's things that you can do. You just need to get pushed in the right direction. If somebody needs a little bit more hand holding, they might want to kind of take more private like coaching on this, then I do also charge for like a startup course. It's more like a one-on-one, like a scheduled one-on-one, where we go through like certain things that before you go into practice you need to understand and you need to be ready for. But I'm the kind of coach that I'm not going to do the work, because then I don't believe that you're going to get the return. And this is also how I practice physical therapy. If I'm the one that's always doing manual modalities or stretching to my patient, they're not going to get better, because they're not going to learn how to do it themselves, right? So I will teach you, but you can stretch your leg. I don't need to stretch your leg. You need to do it. So then you get better. So it's the same approach that I have when it comes to like coaching or teaching other therapists as well. Like, I'll show you what you can do, and here are the 5 things. Take your time in the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, get these 5 things done, and let's meet again and let's talk about it. And then there might be another 3 or 4 things you need to do, and we'll go over it, we'll teach it, we'll practice it, and then try it out on your own for 1 or 2 months, and then let's get back to it and let's talk about it. So there's 2 types of people in this, where sometimes they need a little bit more guidance, or then some people, they have an idea, they just need a little bit of a push. If you need a little bit of a push, I'm more than happy to just tell you my story, because if my story resonates with you, that's great. I think that's really useful. I think the world needs more physical therapists and occupational therapists. I think there needs to be more people like that out there, and I'm more than happy to build a community, get you going, But then if you need a little bit more hand holding, which is fine, but you got to put in the work.
That's a very powerful message, and I would say there are a lot of key takeaways that I personally can foresee. But also, this is the most important message for me would be that time is possibly the most powerful currency, and that is what we have been also banking on. So, as Remesis, we have entered a new territory, which is the US, and we already have a lot of doctors, a lot of physical therapists in particular who are using our software, our technology product to better engage with their patients. And we have also used a very similar sales strategy, if I may call it so. So we have also partnered with a lot of people. These could be physical therapists, these could be people in the physical therapy industry who have some spare time at their hand, and they're utilizing it to potentially push our product to physical therapists, and they are making money out of it. So if one of the, as a viewer, if you're listening to us and if you belong to the physical therapy industry and you have a strong network, it could be with physical therapists, it could be with dentists, or it could be even with doctors. We would love to connect with you and explore if there is a way that we could use your spare time to help push Remesis to more doctors, to more physical therapists across the US. And in the process, both of us make some money, make some goodwill. So, because we are talking technology, and technology is something that is very close to our heart at Remesis. So, I would like to understand how important is technology when you, at your practice, or when you have been working as a physical therapist, how important do you feel technology is?
Personally, I'm very into technology. I get really excited reading articles about new things going on in the world in the tech space. I personally am very interested in technology, but I also understand that it's not necessary. Right? There's a lot of things that technology can do, and it can make your day a little bit easier by saving you time. If that's something that you value and something that you're able to use properly. So personally speaking, I think technology has been very helpful to me as a physical therapist. Something as simple as nowadays with telehealth becoming more and more popular, you can't really do a good video visit without good technology, right? So having like a good camera, having a good phone, having good like headphones, like even just like Bluetooth headphones, like this, it's a piece of technology that's made my job as a telehealth physical therapist a lot easier. And maybe 5, 10 years ago, it wasn't really that popular. It really wasn't that big of a thing. So then this little technology change made it much easier for me to do my job well. And I'm interested in these kind of things. I think it's cool. I think it's fun. I think it's interesting playing around with different pieces of technology, but I also understand that for a lot of people, either from the physical therapist or my patients, technology may be more of a barrier, or it may be more fearful. Like sometimes people are scared about using certain technology because they're afraid of oh, sorry. So it becomes harder to teach 15 people how to use software. But if you have it from day one, and then you add people on one by one, it's easy to kind of integrate people into using technology as well. I do think that the future of healthcare will use more and more technology, whether it's wearable technology, whether it's more like software based, even like AI is becoming more and more not popular, but it's being introduced more in a musculoskeletal rehab facility in phases as well. So it's kind of unavoidable to a sense. So I feel like it does help to embrace technology. Yeah.
Okay. So I think one last question before we jump to the rapid fire round is so you have seen both sides of the world. You have worked as part of a very large organization. You have been a physical therapist or a team member physical therapist, if I may call it so. And you are now running your own physical therapy practice. And before I forget, congratulations on your upcoming center, which you said is going to go live in January 2023. So, one question obviously, you have talked a lot about how you become more independent, how you're able to take care of things that really matter to you. Uh, One thing that I would like to know is what is one of your biggest learning as an entrepreneur? And the second is there something that you miss? So you also had a lot of things going for you when you were working purely as a team member of a part of a large setup. So what is that one thing that you miss, which you had when you were a team member, which you might not have right now as an entrepreneur?
Definitely the thing that I miss the most. I was lucky enough to build my own team. So I was hiring basically everybody in my clinic, from therapists to admin staff to assistants, everything. And I do miss having, like, just a group of people that are just nice people. Everybody has their own story, everybody has their own background. And then we would just like connect at work. And sometimes like I would just get to see like one of my team members interacting with another team member or another patient from the side. I'm just watching them, and then they're doing something more personal, right? So like, such as I remember like walking in, one person I was working with is a really good singer, so she loves singing, and she's very talented too. And then one of my patients is part of like he's part of like a church choir, so he's got a really deep voice, and he's really into singing as well. He every I think it was like Wednesday evening or something after therapy, he would go to his church and he would have like a singing practice. So when he found out that one person on my team loved singing, they were just like talking and they were just kind of singing, and then he got her to kind of open up and just sing her favorite song for like maybe 30 seconds. And I was just walking by and I just saw that, and I thought that was the nicest interaction. It was such a nice, kind experience. And you don't really get to do that by yourself. I think there needs to be other people around, because I don't sing. I'm not, like, nobody wants to hear me sing, right? But other people might have other talents. Other people have different things in their life that they can connect with somebody else, and it just creates such a nice atmosphere. I definitely miss that. I think there's been so many different, that was just one example, but there's so many examples like that. When you're part of a team, you get to experience different levels of kindness in different situations. And I think that's such a nice thing I miss. I don't remember what was the first part of the question, but
So one advice for aspiring physical therapy entrepreneurs.
yeah,
One biggest advice.
I think the biggest advice is don't be scared, but you should really evaluate what's going on. And a lot of times you need to kind of put your ideas to the side, because a lot of times I have my own preconceived notions, I have my own biases, I have my experiences that I keep relying on, even though it might be such a small piece of the puzzle, right? It might be such a small little thing. So I think the important thing for aspiring therapists or aspiring entrepreneurs is you need to kind of get outside of your head sometimes. You need to go out into the world. You need to talk to different people in different industries. You can't, if you're only talking to physical therapists, then you have such a limited view of the world. You need to talk to people that are educators. You need to talk to academics. You need to talk to lawyers. You need to talk to accountants, teachers, just so many different people, just having a wider view of the world, I think is very helpful. And part of that goes into just asking questions, just talking to people, connecting to people, and then you'll kind of see how there's a lot of connections along the way. Like whether like there could be two things that are completely far from each other, but then there's so many connections and things that you can learn from both of them, and they can learn from each other. So one big piece of advice is kind of get outside of your head, get outside of your bubble, learn what you don't know. And sometimes you might think that there's certain things of information you need, but there's so much more that you don't even know is out there. Like, you know, there's things that you don't know, but then there's things that you don't know that you don't know. You know, like those are the kind of things that you really need to try to um find out there. And once you just get more information, once you evaluate your situation, once you have more information, then you can make a better decision. And that, ultimately, that's what it comes down to. You need to make the best decision for you and your family and your future. And a lot of times, if you just stay in your bubble, you're missing the bigger picture. So you're not really making the best informed decision. You're making a decision, but it might not be the best out there for you.
Fantastic. I think that's a very profound message. And my recommendation for any aspiring physical therapy entrepreneur who happens to watch this video today or once we share the recordings over social media, my one simple suggestion or advice would be that it might be a very good idea to actually get in touch with someone like Dr. Bhavik Sheth, who's a repository of tremendous amount of knowledge, experience, insights that he has acquired while working as a physical therapist. And I'm pretty sure he seems like someone who reads and writes a lot. So all this information, all this guidance would come in handy. And even if it is a paid course, I still believe the amount of money that you would be spending on learning from someone like him would save you at least 10 times that amount, which you might end up spending if you do a lot of expensive mistakes on the way of becoming an entrepreneur. So thank you so much, Dr. Shade. And just last four questions. These are like
Yeah, of
rapid fire
course.
questions. So my
Sure.
only request would be not to think too much. Just
Okay.
be free. So the first one is, what is the last thing that you searched on Google? You can look at your phone if you
Can
want.
I
Yeah.
can I check? Yeah, I'm on Google all the time. So I think yesterday night I was searching. It was like an actor. I was watching a movie. I can't remember an actor's name. It was Jude Law. It was just a movie that he was in. I couldn't remember his name, so I just quickly searched on Google. Yeah.
Okay. So as a follow-up, I'll ask the next question, which is, which movie, TV show, or book has inspired you the most?
Wow. Wow. I oh, there's so much. I get inspiration from everything. So definitely book. I'm like you can see in the back over there. I've got a lot of books over
Okay.
there, but Harry Potter, the whole series has been very inspiring for me from a young age. And I've learned a lot of nice messages in there. But I like to read about different philosophies. I like to read about different people's point of views about certain things. So Atomic Habits was a big book that I think inspired me. And even if I disagree with certain books, I think that's still influential. I think it's still like it either like I don't have to believe everything, even if I disbelieve something, that's still helpful to me. Um, TV shows like they're like I'm right now me and my wife are watching Vikings.
Okay.
Um, I don't think there's much to learn from there, but one thing that I do think it's worth noting is that one of the leaders in the show, um, I you know he's again this is all fiction. It's a fiction drama. It's Vikings. It's a lot of war. It's nothing real. But one thing that I like to learn things in different situations. So with this leader, he he doesn't really, he's not too strong of a believer in one thing. So there's big conflicts between the pagans and the Christians. So he comes from a pagan community in the north, and then they're raiding against Christian settlers in England, and nowadays England. But he learned from a Christian slave that he took in, and he learned from him. He learned how to speak his language. He learned about the Christian gods, and then he would see some similarities. And then one sentence he said in this episode we saw yesterday, and I thought that was such a nice sentence, was, "I hope one day our gods, the pagan gods, and your God can be friends." And I think that was such a cool message, and I think that's a sign of a good leader, where he's kind of he's not so strong on his beliefs. He's open to learning about different people, different cultures, and hopefully the season goes well for him, and hopefully he doesn't die the next episode in the upcoming war. But I thought that was a nice thing.
Okay. So the next one for me, as an afterthought now, so you don't look like someone who would ever want to retire. You are like an energy bar, if I can put it so.
Mhm.
But let's look at a hypothetical situation where you decide to retire at, say, the age of 75 or 80. Which city would you want to settle down in?
I think I'm hoping that at that age that things are well, and I could have a life where I can travel a little bit more than I currently get to. But home, I think, is going to be wherever my family is. I do hope to be close, like in vicinity to my family. Whatever my family looks like when I'm that age, I want to live close to them. And then spend maybe a couple weeks in this country, a couple weeks in this country, and just kind of travel the world. But home and where I want to settle is always going to be near family, near friends. Yeah, and definitely, like, who knows where the city? I don't think the city matters. I think the people matter. So as long as I'm close to the people that I love, then that's I can not wish for anything else. At that stage in life.
Okay. The last question, if not a physical therapist, what would you have been?
Oh, easy. I think I'd be a teacher, some kind of professor, some kind of teacher. I love that part of being a physical therapist. I love that I can teach people things, and oftentimes the lesson is the most powerful treatment for the person, whether it's like back pain, knee surgery, whatever the situation is. Sometimes just more the lesson that's important rather than the exercise or the manual therapy or the stretching or whatever. And I think I'd be a teacher. I think I would enjoy it. I think it would be really fun to see even like kids growing, when you start seeing them in the beginning of the school year until the end of the school year. I think there would be a lot of enjoyment and fulfillment that I would get from seeing kids grow, and learn new things and have different ideas by the time the year is done. So something that involves teaching. I think that I would do something.
So this is actually very fascinating because this is the third episode of this podcast series that we have been running.
Mhm.
And without exception, every physical therapist I've asked this question, and everybody has responded that they would most probably be a teacher. So I think in that sense, the future prospects of physical therapy is very bright, because every physical therapist seems to be someone who wants to give it forward and
Yeah,
make sure that more and more physical
absolutely.
therapists are there in the world. So on that note,
Absolutely.
I would really like to thank you so much, Dr. Bhavik. I didn't realize that it's more than 50 minutes now, but this was
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic interaction. You're truly a man with a lot of qualities, someone who dons a lot of hats. And once again, I would like to reiterate that aspiring physical therapist entrepreneurs or people who are working in the physical therapy industry, or even students of physical therapy, should seriously consider speaking to someone like Dr. Bhavik Sheth. Take out his 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I'm pretty sure you will come back much more knowledgeable than where you are today. So thank you, Dr. Bhavik. Thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you. Yeah, my pleasure. It's always a good time to talk.
Thank you so much.